I think the value of these pictures is historical. So I'm not setting out to be seen as a master photographer, although I think they're pretty good. I'm happy to just be thought of as an occasional photographer who happened to be in the right place at the right time. I have an archivist called Sarah Brown who works with me at our company, and she was mainly looking at the work and archiving the work of Linda. So one day during a meeting about Linda's photography, I happened to say to Sarah, hey, I took some pictures in the 60s. I wonder if we have them still. She said, yes, you do. She had relationships with a lot of galleries, including the National Portrait Gallery, where Mary had done some work. And she said they'd like to look at them. So it went from me rediscovering these old pictures to them looking at them, and they liked them. It was wonderful because it took me right back to the period and my relationships during that period with various people, the Beatles, my then girlfriend, Jane Asher, and other people who in my life at the time. So it was a surprise. It was a very warm surprise to go back so far in what were almost family snapshots of mine. Originally, we were just kicking around titles, and I thought Eye of the Storm, because just singular, because the Beatles were in the eye of their own self-made storm. But as we looked at the pictures, I thought, well, it's more eyes of the storm, because there wasn't just one moment. There were plenty of moments where we were at the center of a storm. That was round about when we started to become well known. And I often say to people, one of the things that I think helped us was that we had a staircase to the stars. A lot of people these days are discovered, and overnight they're an international sensation because of social media and because of the internet. Then we were a nothing little group, and then we were a nothing little group in Hamburg, but we started to learn how to do it, learn more songs, learn how to entertain people. So when we got back to England, we could branch out, and we could now play larger places. We play in theaters. We could do TV work. So all these little steps on the staircase, I think, were very helpful, because each time you learned how to take a step, which made the next step easier. And it prepared you for the top of the staircase, which was to come. So those kind of things were beginning to happen. We were getting invited to be on television, and that, of course, increased your fame quite rapidly, because then particularly everyone watched television. On a Saturday night, you could be guaranteed that people would be sitting around watching their televisions. So our fame increased quite rapidly with that. I think George with the two hats is nice, because it's a good portrait of George, and he's not hamming it up. He's just standing there with, just happens to have two hats on. You get the sense that he's enjoying the joke, but he's playing it deadpan. So I like that photograph a lot. We used to move around in our van, and it was a Colmar van, and we had our equipment in the back, and we would be in the front with the driver. who was either Neil or Mal, or me and George, who had recently passed our driving tests, and we would fight for the keys to the van because we both wanted to drive it. Anyway, we'd come down to London and we loved it. It was the big city. It was London. We didn't know our way around, but those days you had maps, paper maps, which are fabulous. I think the thrill was stuff that we hadn't seen in Liverpool was here in London. So it was great. It was exciting. And having to find your way around was pretty exciting too. Ringo would say something strange, just like a malapropism. He'd just say something a bit different, and we'd jump on it. We'd pounce on it. He said, oh God, I'm so tired. It's been a really hard day's night. Hard day's night, that's great. So that became our film title, you know. But he meant it's been a long, hard day, or whatever he meant. And he would say these things. He said, well, tomorrow never knows. It's almost the right expression, but it isn't. So it becomes artistic. It takes on a sort of artistic quality that I say, you know, if you notice it. So we did a song called Tomorrow Never Knows. And the thing I find now is they sound very sensible and part of the language now. Oh, there's no Tomorrow Never Knows, yeah. They weren't quite right, though, anyway, and we pounced on them and used them. So that was half the fun. I think most people in Britain looked up to America because where all the film stars came from, in our case, music. Everything we listened to was American. You know, you didn't really listen to many British bands, and if you did, they'd got it from America. So, you know, it all came from America. So we were just infatuated with America. So we landed at JFK to a huge reception of fans and everything. I think it's a lucky image because it's powerful. It says more than one thing. It says New York, skyscrapers. It says people running, people trying to catch up with our car, us escaping, us trying to outrun them. So it's very typical of the kind of thing that happened to us during that period. It's that pursuit that is really what put the Beatles in the middle of this storm. So all these people running, they are eyes of the storm. You would think it would be terrible. You'd think it would be claustrophobic. You'd think it would be painful. And you'd think that you would feel like an animal in a cage. But I didn't. I can only speak for me. Because this was something we wanted. So that when it happened, when there were crowds outside the Plaza Hotel and the mounted policemen were holding them back, this was like being in a very exciting film. The color pictures start happening really when we get to Miami. And I like that aspect of the selection of pictures because it's like we were living in a black and white world on the rest of the tour. And suddenly we're in Wonderland, Florida, the sun, the swimming pools. We knew we were just going to a sunny resort for the Ed Sullivan Show, and the sun and the surf and all of that was the attraction. And we had some fabulous things happen. The British car company MG loaned us a car each. So suddenly each of us was driving an MG, go on a date in your MG, and at night to a drive-in movie. We'd never been to a drive-in movie ever before. So it was great. You know, it's very exciting. And you're young enough to be totally impressed by it. It's not, there's no, you know, jaded factor creeping in. All of that turned out to be the excitement of Miami. And doing the show was exciting too. But it's mainly what went around it. People became just your friends, just part of your family. So in the same way as you would with your family at breakfast, you could just ignore them. Just do your own thing like people do. And that was very special because we were doing something special. These people were special. One of them was a manager of the Beatles. This other guy is a famous photographer. But it didn't matter. So Robert, for instance, was asked to take a picture for an album cover. And so we were in, I think, Bournemouth at the time in a hotel. And he spied out a location. And then it was like, okay, guys, can I have half an hour of your time? We went, yeah, sure. And we all just went along this corridor to the end where there was a window. So there was natural light coming from this window. And he just arranged 2 chairs, I think it was. And we were sideways. The right-hand side of our face was towards the natural light from the window. And the other side was in shadow, the way he'd lit it and the way he'd set his camera to. So he just arranged us. And so that became this, I think it was with the Beatles. But it's a great shot. And people say, wow, it must have taken hours to set up. Well, no, it's like, I think about half an hour. He just sat us down, talked to us. And he did other things like that. We used Robert quite a few times. Robert Soul was the next time. And again, because we were sort of mates. And because the Beatles noticed what was going on. And I think that was a big secret in our musical career and in our visual careers. We noticed things. I think it's the same as it would be for anyone, that when you look at pictures of yourself younger, and in this case, quite a bit younger, there's a lot of emotions. I think one is, boy, didn't I look good? Well, we all looked young and beautiful. I'm very proud to have been through that period and to be able to have the luxury of capturing that period. When you look back and you think, wow, we did that, we did all of that, and we're just kids from Liverpool. There's every chance that we would have failed, but we didn't. And here it is in these photographs. Boy, how great does John look? How handsome is George? And how funny is Ringo, whatever, but wearing his funny French hat. I just like the positive aspects of these things.